Well, this is a progress so far. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points installed. Still need to clip down the pins on the 2 new motors. The other ones are old motors. This point, and this point have a little bit of EVO stick underneath them. These 2 are locked in place by much friction. I don't need it. So, this is what we have so far. I will replace those wires, but they're there at the moment for reference. And these are the dropper wires. Soldered them on as I said I was going to. But I'm now going to do these little wires. And we've come to a little problem, so I've got my extension lead out. It's not plugged in yet. The problem is, where do I put my soldering iron? So I've got a small, well, it's like an eyelet bent out to make a hook. So that's where it's going to sit. So I use it safe. I'm not going to show you how to do this because you'll find it in my first out and about series. But I'll come back afterwards. Right, I've got my little flashlight on at the same time because I'm just using my phone camera. Oh, pardon me. So, if you've watched the older series, you will be familiar with this because I'm doing the electrics pretty much the same because they work perfectly. Now, I've just done this testing. I put my test rig on. Remember this? And it wasn't thrown properly, and I thought maybe I got the position wrong. But then I thought, oh, hang on, let's put this into the circuit. So now, just get the. It's difficult when you can't see. You got one friggin' hand. Come here. Right. Okay, so we're working. They will need trimming down. Now these ones don't need trimming down because what I've done is I've used the same point motors as before. So this is a new one and this is a new one. Again, this is a special consideration. Originally I said this one was going to have a different point motor, but I found out I could actually fit it in, and I'll explain more about that later. Right, so I'm going to test these now. Bit of printed circuit board. So right, so we've got the little crossing frog things wired in. Now that thing I was cutting is this. Just give it a quick smooth off. Basically these are what I'm going to use as so-called DCC buzz bars, because the last 2 layouts I've wired up I used the buzz bar principle. Usually had beams on the layout made out of coat hanger wire and smaller ones of these inside the control panel, and I never had any problems, so I'm just going to do the same again. You can use them for DC as long as you make sure you keep each track circuit separate. So that's why in the N-Gage one before I had 3 sets of these. So I see this is a lot easier and quicker. I'm going to put one about here, another one about here, and then all these things can just tag onto them. I don't see a point in having a big massive strip of chop blocks with the wire doing this, then this, then this, then this, then this, then this, then this about 50 times just to link the circuits together. Just have one tag strip. Done. Much easier. Right, the time is 19:10. I started this at 1100 hours, roughly. So that's approximately 8 hours. Apart from dinner and a piss, that's about it. Just been on this solid. Right, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve today, so I'm bloody happy. Okay, this point here, because of the so I know this point here even, because of this strut thing, that can wait till later. There's going to be another point going in here, and I'll show you that later. In fact, you've probably seen it on the intro picture. Okay, so today what I've done is I've soldered the bridge points here, as I said I would, with the droppers, all in one piece, and slit them in, glued some of them, fish plated them, wire it all up, and well, let's have a look. That's caught on the spiky bit there. Need to trim them down still. Yeah. What's that switch? Bear with me. There we go. It's got a slight waddle on because I knackered it. I'll explain that later. No, I'll explain it now. No, I won't. Anyway, these 2 points move together. These 2 points move together. I'm happy. Let's move that out a sec. Right. There we go. I may neaten some of this up later on, so I usually like to, you know, tie it, stick it, you know, make it neat. But basically, it's working. I've got all that working now. And where down here it just says test. Well, obviously that's for your trap power. It's a little point bodge, so obviously I can only control these two at the moment, and I'd have to take it out and stick it in them to control those. But I'm quite happy. So that's approximately 8 hours work. Alright. I'll keep me updated. Right. That's a bit of a mess, I know. I should have done it before I laid them, but I forgot. It's important to push that in first so you don't cut that off on the outside. And push it in and find out that it's going underneath, so you want to make sure it still sticks out. But it just looks a bit better. I'm just painted, weathered and ballasted, despite the slight bodge. I still think that looks better than having big pins sticking out where they don't need to be. Just a quick tip: if you want to test your loco, you're not too bothered about actual speed or smoothness, get yourself a 9-volt battery. Wrong way. Simples. Okay, I'm going to talk about those changes now. I've already mentioned this point here has to be moved. Well, the motor has to be basically about here with a rod or something. okay, because it conflicts with this motor. Now I've decided to redesign the layout ever so slightly, so basically there's also going to be another point going here. Okay, so the engine shed is going to move from here to basically here, and this line is now going to go to an inspection pit before the turntable. Okay, now if you remember also, I said I had to drill the holes again. Right, so you've got two sets of holes now, because that little jig I made, I drilled the outside holes. I made a little mistake. Alright, so I rectified it and got one that's now the right size. Bearing in mind this goes upside down, so you need to make sure the holes are in the right place. Right, so your point motor would be here. So let's just pretend this line here is that line I've drawn there, because it's easier to show. What I do now is, I get this, and I put it on the line, okay? And then on this side, it's a bit hard to show you one hand, I draw another line and move this to the new line, okay? And then, whilst holding that, sight the hole with this hole and push it up to that line, okay? And this then stops this being at a slight angle. It keeps it nice and parallel, so then you can just drill your lines. I did that for all the new holes, and as you've already seen, it works. Another thing is, on the previous layout, even though I used 9mm ply topping, I also had foam. And because I'm using the same screws, the screws pop up through the board. So to rectify this, I've made a custom washer that fits the bottom of the Seep print motor. Right? And these little rivet things stick out, so these little recesses for them. Takes a bit of wiggle. There you go. I can show you underneath the board. You can see them in place. Okay, revisiting this problem where we need the alternative point motor. I've drawn the line in the same plane, come to the edge of the board, same for this one. Okay, because underneath it's just way too busy. I've neatened it up slightly, and here instead of having all the feeds going directly to this tag strip, buzz bar, whatever, some of them I've just put 3 in 1, 3 in 1, as long as it all touches the same circuit, doesn't matter. But basically this area here would have to be a point motor pretty much where these wires are. It's not going to happen. There'd have to be a point motor, what was the other one? Basically on top of that, which isn't going to happen. So I'm thinking this nice space here, if I put a point motor pretty much here, though under the board obviously, okay, so we can drive it this way with a rod. Same for this, stick still one about here and drive it with a rod. It would mean cutting into the baseboard. Obviously if you use underlay you don't have that issue, but on this board I'm just going straight for board again. And that's what slowed me down. However, what I might do is, now I've drilled all these holes out for the positioning, once they're in position I might just glue the track down, once I've made my modifications of course, because if I'm going to use this drive rod thing, stretcher bar, tie bar, whatever, it won't really matter about having a hole underneath, so I should be actually safe to just glue them in, put the relevant wires in, and worry about actuating this later. It does mean that the frog will be dead until I sort the motor out though, because the polarity switch is on the motor. Again, if you don't modify the points you won't have that issue, but I'm a bit pedantic. So yeah, that's what's slowing me down at the moment. Let me know what you think. If you've got any ideas, I'd be interested to hear them. Hopefully the next update will be a lot more interesting than seeing the same points all the time. Right, ciao for now.